Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Serwer. I'm here with Robert Ford, CEO of Abbott Laboratories. Robert, great to see you.
Nice to be here.
So we want to talk about leadership, and I want to start off with the heavy stuff. You become CEO of Abbott in March of 2020, just as the COVID epidemic is sweeping across the globe. Tell us what leadership skills you brought to bear to address this.
Well, I mean, it's first of all, I think I get asked this question quite a bit sometimes, right? And I'd say it's good to take over a company that's in good, strong shape the way Abbott was. So that makes I think that makes a difference. The other thing is that I think it was pretty level set. I don't think there was, like, if you're a new CEO or a CEO that's been there for 10, 15 years, I mean, everybody was level set in the same playing field. Nobody could go back, oh, remember what happened 20 years ago when we had this, right? So everybody was kind of trying to do the same thing. I think that for me, one of the things that I wanted to do was to kind of re-engage the employees and quite frankly, a lot of our customers too, in the sense that, sometimes we take for granted what we do as healthcare companies and people that work in healthcare. And that was one of the things that I took advantage, is to really re-engage the employees to say, hey, this is what Abbott is built for, right? I mean, we were the company that developed the first HIV test. We had huge efforts in producing penicillin in World War II. So this is another moment where our number is being called and we need to step up. And as a leader in diagnostics, I think that was, an interesting thing to do, to get everybody kind of rallied around, hey, there are going to be companies that aren't going to be doing what we're going to be doing, and we're going to go all in in our role. It's going to be tiring, but there's a reason we're going to do what we're going to do. So that, I think, was very important to really get everybody to believe in what we were doing and re-energize, like, hey, this is what we were built for at moments like this, right? And then, the key thing was just saying, okay, our area where we're going to contribute is going to be in testing. We're a leader. We have all this expertise. So I think one of the things that we wanted to do was to really look at the disease, across, from beginning of testing till like vaccines and all that. What's the portfolio of testing we're going to need? And we identified, 4 or 5 different areas that we know we could have an impact on: molecular testing in labs, all the way down to like your home test. And we basically built teams, self-contained teams that had R&D, clinical, manufacturing, just all these teams. And we met every day. Every single day with every single team, 1 hour a day. Where are we? What are the decisions that need to be made? And I think one of the key things that I realized during that is just you have this incredible talent, passionate now that you've got everybody rallied around it. And my real job was to unconstrain ourselves. Right. So there was a lot of decisions and a lot of challenges. Well, we can't do it in this time. We can't do it. And one of the things that was coined was, the Robert, if we had to do it by next week, what would need to be true? Right. And just keep on pushing that. And just the creativity that people had. So that was an important part. I mean, I got a lot of great scientists, a lot of great people to do it, but they needed that push to say, okay, yeah, like, we're not in that normal world. I need you to just unconstrain yourself. So I think Jack Welch, used his term kind of chief broom officer, just moving things aside, barriers, paradigms aside, and just let your team flourish. And I think that's what you saw from Abbott during this period, was just the team and the passion and the commitment just kind of come out there. So I think those are some of the key things. And then the other thing that was personal to me was, as I started to get into it and realize that, hey, we're actually doing some pretty different things that we've historically done and doing it really fast. I think that became a little bit of a personal goal of mine, to be able to show that, larger companies, considered older companies, we're not relegated to be slow, right? We can actually do things pretty fast. And, it's not just the startups that can be nimble and fast, but we can do that also as larger companies. We just need to think a little bit differently. And that actually was really rewarding to be able to kind of see that go into the organization. And some of it has actually stayed. Some of it snapped back. I can see that. But some of the philosophies and principles and ideas of decision making and speed of decision making are still there, and I think that's good also.
You famously made the Binex Now test, that home test, and the effect that had on society and the economy is hard to quantify, or I don't know, maybe you have. But what made it so successful? How were you actually able to execute and get that test out?
I think the ambition was and I said setting some pretty amazing ambitions. So we went to our factory. So me and my chair and our chairman, who had a lot of experience and was the previous CEO, Miles White. We went to our factory in Maine that was making the ID Now. Now this was the rapid molecular test in that white, toaster looking kind of design. So we were there to talk to the team about increase our manufacturing. And then in the corner of the table, there was this box. And we said, what is that? And they kind of brought it over, and it was a Binex type test, but I think it was for malaria or Legionella, some disease. And I says, and I didn't even know we made those. And I said, we make this? And I said, yeah. Where do we make it? And it was right here in this building over there. And I was like, well, show us. And they showed it to us. And we left that meeting. It was kind of mid-April of 2020. And the next day we brought a team together and said, we're going to build a COVID test for home testing. This is the form factor we're going to use. And we're going to have to make 50 million of these a month. And this is in April of 2020. And the reason we're giving, and we need to do it by June, July timeframe. So there's this unrealistic timeframe. And the reason we set it up is we believed that this was going to be the test to help schools reopen. We went through the experience. I could see it happening with my kids. And we said, okay, by July of 2020, the schools are going to be having to make a decision. Do you go back? Or do you stay remote? And we said we needed to have something that was tangible for them to make the decision. No, we're going back, because we ultimately believed that was the right thing. So we set up 3 factories. We were building factories without even knowing if the test was ready to go. The things that we were doing, but it was predicated on scale. Big scale, because that's what the country needed, and then the connectivity to a QR code so that you could have something on your phone. We didn't do 50 million in August, but we got to 50 million in October, and that was pretty spectacular. And we built the entire supply chain here in the U.S. So 3 factories here in the U.S., supply chains here in the U.S. We created 5,000 jobs. $25 starting kind of, and it was just this incredible effort. Everybody wanted to be part of it. Our employees wanted to be part of it. Suppliers wanted to be part of it once they figured it out. And then once the federal government realized what we were doing, then they obviously wanted to be part of it too.
Consumer-facing diagnostic.
Yeah.
No prescription. I mean, really.
Yeah, and in the beginning, you did require a prescription, right? But then things, moved along, and then, absolutely. So
that's not all that Abbott does, of course. So why don't you tell us what else your company is doing?
Well, we're a broad-based healthcare company. And it's broad-based because you're not concentrated in just one sector. So we like that risk mitigation aspect, but more importantly, we like the spectrum of being across all of healthcare and different stages of healthcare. So we have a nutrition business. Where we make pediatric nutritionals all the way to adult nutritionals, and we're in that because good health starts with good nutrition, right? So that gives us kind of an understanding of the basis. Now things happen, so then you have to get diagnosed. So we're a leader in diagnostics, from kind of lab-based diagnostics all the way to the home. 70% of all medical decisions start with a diagnostic test. So that gives us a good insight there. And then, once you're diagnosed that you have an issue, then you have to treat it. And we treat it with a medicines business, a pharmaceutical business that is exclusively focused on emerging markets. So it's a branded generic model for emerging markets. And we have, devices, medical devices that are either implanted or et cetera. So really that spectrum from prevention with good nutrition to discovering what you have or, what help you need, and then actually having the tools to address it. And that really gives us a good understanding of the healthcare environment that we're in.
You've worked at the company for a number of years. You grew up in Brazil. I guess I'm curious as to how that international background helped you in your career.
A lot. Abbott's a global healthcare company. And so 65% of our revenues come from overseas. And so I grew up in a multicultural household with an American mother, a Brazilian dad with British background. So I had this very kind of, weird's the wrong word, but it's just this very rich, actually, environment where, I'm celebrating Thanksgiving on this random Thursday in Brazil that nobody knows, but I'm getting infused with that culture from my mom. I have all my Brazilian friends outside of the house. So I think that gave me a better appreciation for what it means to be a global company, not be an international company where you have operations, but truly have a global mindset on how we think about problems, how we think about solutions that we see overseas, and being much more open, to that. Our global marketing teams, are very global, the way they should be. So we have people that grow up in different countries, and they come to our headquarters, and they bring that real global perspective that really challenges how we think about things. So I think that's been invaluable for me in my career.
You went to college in the United States, Boston College. How intentional were you about your career? How purposeful? In other words, did you have goals? I want to be a senior manager by age 35, or what were you thinking?
Not a lot, actually. I was just really thinking about paying rent, moving out of my parents' house. And so I really didn't think about getting into healthcare. And that was my first job. Somebody took a shot at me. But I think throughout most of my career, I get asked this a lot by especially, people that are coming into the workforce and they're kind of looking at managing their careers. And just, I never aspired to be in this role. I never said to myself, I'm going to be CEO of Abbott. Probably a year or two before it happened, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And I think I want to be part of the next generation of this company. But until then, I was just really focused on learning and enjoying myself. I never had, every 2 years this, or, by this, date that. I was just really focused. I've had jobs at Abbott. I've been with Abbott for 27 years. I've had jobs where, they lasted 15 months, and I've been in jobs that they were there for 7 years. And not one of those situations was I thinking, okay, what's my next thing? So as long as you're challenged, you got an opportunity to learn. I think that, good things will happen to you if you work for a good company. And if you just kind of stay put, those good things, that's what I've learned at Abbott. And that's what I tell people at Abbott, don't be so in a rush, really focus on learning, and good things will happen.
Now, at some point, though, you began to supervise people. And so you must have been thinking about managing people, being a leader, inspiring people. Mm-hmm. Have you learned to do that by training, or was it just completely intuitive for people out there? What are some ways that you grew as a leader? Well, I'm not sure I got, here's the 10 things that you must do to be a good manager. So I think probably, you do try to augment through reading and things like that.
But I think the best way to do it is just to to learn by doing it, right? So I made a lot of mistakes at managing teams and kind of how I motivated them, how I set targets and all of that. At least in the beginning, where I didn't have a lot of experience, and like, hey, here's a team of 8 people, kind of manage them. But over time, you learn to understand, what drives people, what motivates people, how to provide context, how to provide a perspective, and really important, how to listen. Right? I mean, that's probably the hardest thing I think that leaders have, to do. And I think that as I've gotten higher up in the organization, I've become much more aware of the importance of listening, and quite frankly, have done a better job at listening, like true listening. Not I'll listen, but I know what I'm going to say already to you. So I think just the experience of kind of doing that. And learning, and I think learning how to manage kind of global teams. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes when I didn't really have a lot of experience in Asia.
What kind of mistakes did you make?
I was very good, because of the American culture. I was very good at interacting with Americans. I was very good interacting with different countries in Europe. I don't like to say Europe because every country is different, right? But I didn't have much experience in Asia. I had 0 experience. So I made mistakes in terms of, how I interacted with customers, how I taking kind of my view of how to motivate and drive teams is different. And again, I only think that you get to know that when, you do that, you make your mistakes, and it's okay if you're aware that, I got to adjust that over here, or, and one of the things I ended up doing is I ended up buying that book, Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands.
What is that again, sir?
It's a book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. And it's basically every country in the world. It's probably got about 5 or 6 pages, and it talks all about the, just the business etiquette of, how to do business in that country, how to talk to teams, and just things like that. And so every country I would go to, I would, take a copy of it and just make sure that I kind of read up on it, because you can't say like, oh, in Asia it's like this, or in Europe it's like that. No, in France it's like this, in Germany it's like that, in Japan it's like that, it's different in India, etc. So
and that was helpful. That's great.
Oh yeah.
You have a leadership training program at Abbott, where I understand thousands of people have gone on. It's called Leading with Impact.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Tell us about that. What's the purpose of that, and how does that work?
I think that one of the things that you want to do when you have a big organization and in a world that's moving fast is that you can't micromanage every decision, right? But every small decision in a country can have a huge impact to the entire enterprise. So how do you find a way to balance the need for speed, but at the same time create a shared framework of values on how to think about decision making and how to approach decision making, and some key things about how we think as a company about how to make decisions. And so I think that that's really at the core of kind of leading with impact, is really just an opportunity to provide a shared understanding with people that make decisions in the company, to say, I entrust you with the power to make a decision. I'm not going to micromanage it, but at the same time, we have to adhere to all of this. If we all do it, then we all get to kind of have a shared decision process, and we can be fast. So it's really about decentralizing decision making, but doing it in a way that's true to our values and true to our strategy and how we think about things.
Another program you guys have is called Shape the Future of STEM for Women in STEM.
Yes.
Why is that important to you and to Abbott?
Well, it was interesting. One of our chief engineers at the company, she was with the company for a long time, and she's an African-American engineer, one of our top engineers. And she noticed that, when she went to schools, that there wasn't really a strong talent pool of women engineers. So she started a program, obviously with her drive, but, obviously I think the company started to back her up, but it was all on her, which was to drive, just this she saw like a fall off from girls in STEM in high school, junior high school, and then it drops off pretty significantly when you go to college. And what she wanted to do is provide visibility to, the girls that were interested in STEM, that there actually is women engineers and top women and engineers doing real incredible stuff in the company. So she set up a whole program by which we gave internships to girls in high school, not in college, in high school, at our facilities, and like real work, to get them exposed to that. And we've actually been, we started the program in 2012. One of the graduates of that program actually joined full-time Abbott. I think it was in 2021. So that was super rewarding. And we've published a blueprint. We've made it available. This is how we do it. This is how you set one up. This is how you interact with the high schools in your community. We focus a lot on the underserved communities also. And we just think that's just fundamental to who we are. And in this case, it was, it was a way to actually create more talent. So we're very proud of that. And I think about what she did, and she had the vision in 2012 to start this, and it's been there ever since.
Is healthcare an industry that you would recommend young people go into?
I every time I talk to young people, I say, we all talk about purpose and mission and all of that. I think that it is a massive advantage for anybody who's worked in healthcare, that you go through so much during the day, there's so much demands, but for you to have exposure to see what you do to somebody's life. I literally just got an email today from somebody. I had no idea who this person is. They obviously got my email. They took a picture of their family, and it was just a random email saying, "Thank you very much. I wanted you to personally know that what you developed, what you made available, changed my family's life, my baby, my kid." That's hugely rewarding. So I think that if you're looking for that, I think healthcare's got it in spades. Really, in a lot of different areas. I mean, there's companies and manufacturers, but even in the service areas also. When I talk to physicians in hospitals, it's crazy what they go through. But the reward that they get is just as real too. So I think it's highly motivating to do that. Yeah.
Another question about your career, Robert. How much did you rely on colleagues and mentors as you progressed?
A lot. I mean, yeah. In the beginning, I especially the first person that hired me, I learned a lot from him. I think as you grow in the organization, I think you need to be looking up and having mentors that can kind of share that experience. You got to have peers that you can talk to. I think sometimes it's difficult in a company to find peers that you can be, vulnerable about issues you're facing with your team or with your results. But I think it's important to find that. And quite frankly, people, that, are hierarchically below you, but to have a different, are seeing something different. So I've tried to surround myself with, all different levels. But yeah, I think it's extremely important to do that. We have a mentor program at Abbott where we match kind of our high potential talents with, the 50 top executives of the company, and and it's genuine. They want to interact with them. They want to help them out. But one thing is to mentor. The other thing is you got to advocate, right? And that's the other aspect too, right? And that's something that's very important for us, which is I know this person should be given a chance, and I am, in a way, kind of vouching for them, and I think that's really important also.
What about advocating for yourself? I mean, that's important to do, but you can overdo it. How did you calibrate that? In other words, beating your own drum, not hiding your light under a bushel. You want to raise your hand, but not all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
My experiences with Abbott. So, that's the company I've known all my life. And my experience with Abbott has always been, you don't have to do that. Sometimes you might feel that you weren't recognized as much, but the company will come we'll come to the right spot, and you will get recognized for it. But I think the philosophy that we have at Abbott is all about kind of servant leadership. And that's really an ingrained cultural aspect throughout our top executives that, it's not about you. It is never about you. It's about the company, and it's about the people at the company, and about, our customers. And, you're there to serve them and not to, and not to find a way to make you look better or bigger or whatever. And I think that there's always differences, and you can tell that. But I think I think it's genuine amongst most of our leaders that they truly believe that. There are people that work for Abbott for 35, 40 years. So after a while, you don't, why are you doing this? Like you have enough financial security right now. Like why are you doing this? And most of the times when I talk to people that are retiring, I just had a meeting with somebody on Monday who's retiring. I asked them to come into my office just so we could chat, and that's what comes out is, I stuck around because I felt I had an obligation to my team, to the customers, whatever it is, but it was never about that person. And I think that's important.
You said you weren't so intentional early on in your career. Mm-hmm. Are you more intentional now? Do you sort of have a plan for the next 20, 30 years of your life? Have you thought about that?
Well, I have an idea of what I think healthcare needs to do and needs to be, and how I want Abbott to be leading that. So I have a lot of ideas and things that we want to kind of get in motion to think about, where is healthcare going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now? So that's the only thing that I'm thinking about. And really getting Abbott ready for, what is going to be a next chapter, I think, in healthcare.
And final question, Robert, how in the world do you stay on top of things, ahead of the game, keeping up with all the change going on in society and healthcare? It must be quite the task to do that.
You got to go back to what I said about, being connected to healthcare. So you got to have this natural motivation to be, to be able to do it. But I'd say I have a great team. And I think a lot of CEOs would say they've got a great team, and I think that's the starting point. But then you've got to find the time to be external. I think that's really what I drive a lot of the organization is, you have to be out, you have to see your customers, you have to be with your teams, get in a car, go field travel with a sales rep, go see customers. And I think that helps you kind of stay on top of things. Talking to your customers, knowing what's on their minds, what are their concerns, and then being close to your team. So I think that's a key. I think that's an important thing. I think there's like two big forces that are coming to healthcare. That are going to be two big kind of disruptions, and I think that being close to your customers, you can start to plan for them and start to think about kind of
what are they.
Well, I think on one end you've got like this convergence of health and tech, happening, and I've been pretty public about that convergence and what it can do, whether it's AI, whether it's digitalization, consumer empowerment. That's one. The other side is you've got this healthcare crisis that's coming our way, and I'm a very big believer in the climate crisis and the role that we as humans are doing to accelerate that. But I do think that the healthcare crisis will be here before the climate crisis. What I mean by that is you've got an aging population that's going to be demanding and requiring more services. You've got governments that aren't necessarily having more and more resources, right? Mm-hmm. Just look at what's going on here in this country in terms of the budget and all that. And then you've got this notion that there's going to be less and less healthcare workers. I think the WHO forecasts a shortage of 20 million workers by 2030. So on one end, you've got this incredible ability to use innovation technology to solve problems. And then at the same time, you've got this, I think, a healthcare crisis that's coming our way. So I think that one of the big things that we're trying to really rethink is really rethinking the reward for innovation. And especially in healthcare, if you think about a company that does something that nobody's done, developed a drug that nobody has, or whatever it is. Quite frankly, a lot of industries have this same thing. The reward for that innovation usually tends to be being able to charge more, right? I have a higher price because this is an innovation that nobody has. And I think that the problem with that model is you've got everything that I just described that's happening, and so we need to think about, and I tell this to the R&D teams, you got to solve the clinical and the medical problem, but your job's got harder because you actually have to solve the access problem. And you have to use technology to kind of bend the cost curve so we can kind of lower the costs immediately and not think of the win as like, hey, I got a higher price, but think of the win as I'm the ability for me to reach much more people. And like you raise Binex, if you go back to September of 2020, a COVID test cost $100. Okay, we went in and we launched it at $5. Okay, right. The amount of times I heard people say, like, "Why did you do it at $5? I'll pay 10." Even they all said, "Well, we could pay more. We could pay." You're leaving money on the table, and our view was like, "No. What you just described as the impact is because of that kind of thinking to get to more people." And I think that's a big driver of ours is how do we rethink what we've been doing to be able to get to much more people. Our continuous glucose monitor, the Libre, it's a great product. The awesomeness of it is not necessarily that you can measure glucose from your arm and send that information to your phone. The awesomeness of what the R&D team was to figure out how to make it at a scale that's unprecedented, where you can then go and launch it at a price that is a seventh of our competitor. So anyways, I went off a little bit on a rant there, but I think that's a kind of a big driver of us and the leadership that's involved in that, right? Because you're having to change a paradigm that's been there for decades and decades and decades. So
it's a lot to figure out, so it should keep you very busy.
Yeah.
Robert Ford, CEO of Abbott Labs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.